The angle we've drawn in there is the preferred angle of the arms to the shaft, 143, 144 degrees, right around in there. And you can see that his arms are pretty straight, almost in line with the shaft. So one of the things we'd like to do is to get his hands down a little bit lower. It also looks like he's maybe settling back on his heels a little bit because of that. So what we're going to try to do is get him to get his spine going at about 150 degrees. See, so he's pretty close there. So the posture's not really bad, but we would like to see a little straighter spine than that. Notice how he's kind of rounded here a little bit. So we're going to work a little on that, the posture. But let's watch the takeaway. What we want to see in the takeaway is we want to see the club stay on or above the swing plane that's described here by the shaft. So let's see what's going on. Notice how straight his arms are to the shaft. Okay, so he's going to start back. He's going to get really deep inside. And the club face is dead shut. See that? It's still shut there. And then he's going to go above the swing plane there and chop down on it. Hands are way high now. Look how high they are now compared to where they were at setup. And he scoops again. So we're going to get him to reroute the club a little bit so that the downswing is more that way. Down to the ball from the inside. Okay, we're going to watch this swing in slow motion here. Now, when you watch it motion like that, it looks like a pretty good swing. We're just going to back it up here to the impact position. And I'm going to show you that he's actually throwing the club head or casting the club. He's got great leg drive, but you can see that the hands aren't nearly as far forward as they should be because he's already hit the ball and he's forcing the club under the ball. See that right there? We'd like to see, at this point, the club be on that line back there so that he has more club lag through to the impact zone. Okay, what we're going to notice here in the setup is that his shoulders are level. That's a non-natural position. The right shoulder needs to be considerably lower than the left shoulder because the right shoulder needs to be lower than the left shoulder because the right hand is lower than the left hand. So we'd rather see the shoulders on a little bit of this angle here. That puts a spine tilt kind of away from the target line a little bit. Gets us in a more natural position and allows us to hit up on the ball. His tendency is to hit the ground before the ball. So we're going to watch for that a little bit. So let's watch the takeaway now as we move through the shot. Okay, right there he starts to sway. Notice the lower body swaying to the outside of the trail leg. And he's tipping over backwards. At this point now we'd like to see the butt a little bit more behind him, over here more, and the weight on the inside of that foot, not on the outside of the foot. So he can roll off of it better. He's got a nice high backswing. Now he's doing a pretty good job of repositioning himself, but he gets stuck right there. Notice how the right hand is dead under the golf club, and it stays under the golf club too long and doesn't allow him to rotate. He doesn't rotate to about here. So what we'd like him to do is, as he's coming in, we want him to be able to move into the power position a little more effectively. The power position is this white line down the outside of the lead foot. At impact, we'd like to see his thigh past that line. So let's watch what happens. He sways way off the power line and never gets quite back to it. That's why he's scooping. Then when he finishes, he's through there. But we need to get him there earlier in the swing. At setup here, his shoulders are too level, and you can tell that his lead shoulder is pulled back away off the line a little bit. We want to get his shoulders in square, parallel to the target line, and get a spine angle kind of like that, instead of so straight up and down. Let's watch the takeaway and see if that isn't affecting the takeaway. So he's going to start there. And see what happens? He lifts straight up. See how he's lifting? His knees and everything lift up because he's kind of out of position at the setup. Then he kind of stays low. Does a great turn here. Now he's going to try to roll off the inside of the right foot. Right knee goes to the left knee. A little bit under the club there. We'd like to see the right hand more over the top. and then he just quits rotating. He was rotating pretty good, but his right hand is still under the club. He's in a stuck position. He rotates late. So we're going to get him to pay a little more attention to that early part of the takeaway. Go back and take a look at that again. That little move right here, where you sort of lift up out of the shot. That's quite a bit of movement right there. And rotating the hands better through impact. That setup, you can see this golfer is using a pretty strong forward press, but it's not really a bad setup at all. Let's just watch what happens as he takes the club back. Turns back nicely. He starts moving his head a little bit. Now, that's about as far as he can get, because what's happened is his knees have gotten further apart. So he's actually resisting making a good rotation to the backside. Now, as he comes down, he's going to drastically scoop the ball. Watch this. It's coming down. Pretty good position right there. And then the right hand goes underneath. It stays underneath, and he scoops the ball up. And what happens when you do that a lot of times is you're actually going to be lifting the club head up too early, and you're going to top or skull the ball, which is what he did there. And he never gets the hands rotated through, and because of that, he can't rotate his hips around this way. He ends up kind of stiff. So we're going to get him to try to get a little taller stand at the top of the at the top of the follow-through, right there where we're standing up, and to rotate the hands aggressively so that I can see the glove fingers in this position right here. You have a pretty good setup here. The ball could be a little further forward. You want the ball in front of the left cheek. It's a little bit behind that. Well, let's watch the takeaway, see what happens. Pretty smooth. Pulling the club too far to the inside. Now what he's doing here is he's winding up around his right leg, but he's not really creating any coil because his hips have turned exactly the same amount as his shoulders, and he's up on his toe. We want the shoulders to turn 90 degrees and the hips to turn about 45 degrees, or about half as much as the shoulders, so we can create a really good coil onto that right leg. You'll also notice that his right foot now, his weight is shifted to the outside of that right foot. Let's see what happens as he moves into the shot. Shoulders and hips all moving together. And he scoops the ball. And again, there's that right hand underneath the golf club instead of over the club. We really have to have the rotated over at that point there. See, it's still underneath. Still underneath. We got to get into the shake hands position as soon as we can with that right hand. Okay, let's watch the left-hander. He's got a pretty decent setup there. His back foot is square to the target line. Pretty decent takeaway there. But you can see that he's pulling his left arm kind of in behind him there. That's a little bit of a stuck move. Right there, he's in pretty good position. Now we see how he's leaning forward here. Watch this. And leans over. He's moving his head too much. At this point here, here's where he should stop, and he should start back to the golf ball. So it would look like that. Instead, he's going here, and then he tips over a little bit, and he ends up with his head past the golf ball before impact. And he has no choice but try to scoop it. Notice that he's got the chicken wing going on. He's got a breakdown here, and a breakdown, whoops, and a breakdown here. So we got it, both sides have broken down. So we got here and here. And he's scooping under the club. So let's see if we can work on that a little bit and get a little bit better turn. Okay, now we're going to watch the down the line view. Let's watch the takeaway a little bit here on the way back. Now what's happening is he's taking the club just a hair too far to the inside, and that's what's causing him to lift. We'd like to see the club stay on or above the swing plane that's created by the shaft. And he gets way inside there. Then he gets to the top of the shaft pretty good, but then he's going to come out over the top of the power line. See that, where his hands are well above where they were? And notice again, the right hand is underneath the golf club and is leaving the face open, and he's going to push that ball a little bit. He did a pretty decent job of finishing that time. So what we're going to try to get him to do is bring the club down and this way instead of over the top. See how he's coming over the top and outside? If we could just get him to drop down, he'd be better off, which is closer to what he's doing on his takeaway. See how his takeaway is and then up? If he just did that on the way back to the ball, he'd be perfect, see? Okay. We're going to see a little yip in the takeaway here also. What we'd like to see is a nice, smooth takeaway where that right elbow just goes straight back like that. But watch what happens as he gets ready to do the takeaway here. So he's lifting the club up. And he starts back. So we need him to get rid of that little lifting motion and not take the club so steep to the inside because he gets stuck and his right knee straightens up. Now we're going to see a good rotation into the shot. Look at the right knee moving right together with the right arm. Turn the hands over. Pretty good. And through. He's got a little more rotation in him than that if he works on it right here, where we could really see the left fingers under the hand. But this is pretty good and a big improvement from where he was just a few weeks ago. Good job. One of the things we see right away is how far to the right the shoulders are aligned. They're really pointing off in this direction here. So we need to get those shoulders squared up, parallel to the target line. Her target was a flag that's out about here somewhere. And she's really twisted and turned away from that. So she's got to hit the ball to the right or top it and tug it hard left. So let's go in slow motion, see what happens. Club's going way back to the inside, stuck way behind her. And she's got no relaxing in her wrists. And she's going to come down. Club face is pretty square to the path. And the head moves forward and she chunks it a little bit and pulls it left. So we got to work on her setup, really take some time on getting some setup, and to work on getting those hands to set the club at a nice 90-degree angle right about here. Okay, the white line represents the swing plane. The swing plane is prescribed by the shaft angle at setup. So let's just see how he does on that. We want the head of the club to stay on or above that plane. He's a little bit below it, but not bad. But then he gets really below it right here. And then he's going to come over the top if he's like everybody else. Exactly, that's what happens. So he's coming over the top, kind of collapsing down and gets all stuck. You can really see that steep downswing throws everything off. So we'd like to see him, instead of going up and out, have him go up and down. Up, down. So his hands go right back on that white line, right back to the ball. The white line is what we call a power line. We want our lead side to stay on that line during the takeaway and not sway off of it. And you'll see that he sways pretty far back away from that shot. And let's see if we can get back to the shot. No, he doesn't. He stops moving into the shot. There's no forward momentum at all here. The elbows are separating, and he scoops the club. And therefore, and then look at the right foot kind of move to try to catch up to it. So what we've got to do is we've got to get him to stay closer to the white line. And then when he starts his swing, instead of moving his head, I want him to slide the hips around. If the head goes first, the hips don't go at all. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at this golfer down the line. Watch the takeaway. Notice the club right there is blocking my view of the hands. That's an excellent position. Excuse me. Right on through to the top of the backswing. Notice that the lead arm is just about parallel to the shoulders. The only negative here is I'd like to see the left knee turn in a little bit more towards the right knee and the right knee flex a little bit more. Now he's going to drive back down to the golf ball. So he's coming over the top here. See, his hands are coming up way higher than they were at setup. So he's going to get a little left to right cut. Just take a look at where that happens. You can really see it if I just draw in the swing line here. There's this plane. He stays nicely on that plane on the takeaway, but watch how high he is on the downswing. So his hands are really coming out pretty far, and then he goes left, and it'll go to the right. So we're going to work on that a little bit. I think we've overemphasized the forward press a little bit. And so what that's going to do is he's going to create a little bit of a tip over at the top of the backswing. So let's watch what happens here. He's going to set the wrist pretty early. And he's going to go right about here, and then he's going to kind of tip over. We'd like to see this, the back on that line there, so the butt's behind him a little bit more. And then we're going to see if he can rotate back onto the shot. A little bit of a scoop there. And well under the club. Again, we got to get that club rotating more so that the hands, the left hand, I can see the fingers at this point. Really rotate and then finish nice and tall. Not bad finish. Okay, at this point here we see a couple of things. I'd like to see his spine tilted a little bit more to the left here so that his spine was kind of more on that line a little bit rather than so straight up and down. That'll help him get a little more elevation out of his shot and a little more penetration with the shot. Let's go ahead and move it forward to the top of the backswing, where I believe he stops way too short. Notice that the hips are kind of sliding too, and he's tipping over. And he only gets to about there. That's where you'd like to be for a little wedge shot. But for a full drive, you want those hands and that club to be up here, parallel to the ground. So we're going to work on getting him to be able to get parallel to the ground, and then he can drop the hands down and drive through the shot. So he gets pretty good width there, pretty good action there. But because he doesn't have enough room to generate the swing, he can't get the power that he wants. Okay, we have the swing plane drawn in there. Let's watch the takeaway. Club's just barely below it, not bad. Little lifting going on there. Then he comes up. Now let's see if we can bring his hands right straight back down to the white line. Nope, they're going out. So you can see it turning it out, going way over the top of the white line. And then he's going to have a hard time making good contact with the ball because he's out of position. And notice how high he is. That's just about ready to hit the ball, and the club is quite a bit off the ground. Remember, we're trying to hit through the ball and into the ground with the club. We hit the little ball first, then we hit the big ball. So we need to get him to get down to that ball a little bit better and not be flipping it. One of the things we'll notice here is that the feet and the shoulders aren't on the same line. You got the feet pointing way out over that direction, and the shoulders kind of going almost to the net. We're going to work a little on the posture to get that alignment better. We want the knees, feet, ankles, elbows, shoulders, ears, all parallel to the target line, which is that way, not kitty corner. So clear that out. Let's watch the takeaway. Again, taking the club pretty far to the inside, then up, and then over the top. See how he's coming up and over the top to the outside. And he's going to have to pull that pretty drastically in order to not hit it over to those trees over there. And he does that. But I think he's going to find a much easier time of swinging and rotating if this foot isn't so far behind him. Okay, we see a pretty good setup here. He's turning back. And notice he's turning his shoulders back too level. So they're not... We'd like to see him turn his shoulders back more parallel to that line. See how he's actually going quite a bit above that line. So we want him to get his turn a little more vertical. And then he wants to relax his hands at the top of the backswing so he can set the club at 90 degrees. He hasn't quite done that. Now he's going to come down to the ball. Does a pretty good job there, but watch him lift up. See how he lifts up out of the shot? And scoops the ball. That's a loss of power. Now this golfer, you'll notice that the shaft and the hands and the arms are in a straight line. We want her to do this in this case because she's going to try what's called natural golf. And in natural golf, it requires less body movement. So she has a little trouble controlling where her head's been going. So all we're going to ask her to do is try to fold the right arm on the takeaway. Let's see what happens here. Folds the right arm, keeps the head nice and still, and then unfolds the right arm right back at the golf ball. Well, that's the problem there. She's casting over the top. See how the club's coming over the top? We want the club to go in the same path that way. So back and forth on the same line, not come here and then dive the head down and go over the top. You're chopping at it that way. This golfer setup is creating an inside backswing. So she's going to take the club steeply to the inside. So she actually gets the club behind her there instead of on the plane. And she comes up, lifts way up, bends both elbows. And now she's going to chop kind of down on the ball, kind of lose control there. So here at the top, we've got to have her arms straight. Probably she's going to stop about right there because right here, that's when she lifts. So we're going to keep from lifting and then just turn, drive right back to the ball. Okay, from down the line, she starts out in a pretty good position. Then what happens is she sort of sinks down before she swings the club. She's better off here than here, because now the weight is shifted to the heels, and she's going to feel all jammed up taking the club back. And we can even see that as we watch the club go back, how she's sort of jammed up and kind of tips. All right. Very athletic, though, very strong. Now she's going to drive down through the ball, pulling her arms in close to her body because she can't rotate through, not getting any extension down the line. So we're going to get her to work on staying in that early set position.